The stars stretched like scattered embers across the void, but to Admiral Kale of the Council Armada, they were nothing more than backdrop, an unending stage on which his fleets performed the same monotonous play. Another human colony burned behind him, its orbital platform shattered, its defense fleets vaporized before they had managed to coordinate a single counterstrike. He leaned back in his command chair, long limbs folded, eyes half-lidded with disdain. Victory had long ago lost its savor. Humanity, to him, was not a worthy opponent, but an inconvenience that refused to collapse as quickly as it should. "Report," he muttered, his voice like sand across metal. The censor officer, a younger lieutenant eager for recognition, stood a little taller. Resistance minimal. The outpost's militia lasted 3.4 minutes before disbanding. Ground forces are indulging themselves. He did not add the obvious, that soldiers were looting, amusing themselves with terrorizing civilians, treating this campaign as nothing more than sport. Kale exhaled in amusement. Indulging. That's one word for it. His eyes swept the holographic projection, displaying the wreckage orbiting the planet. He made a small gesture, and the symbols representing human warships vanished with a flicker, leaving only council vessels in serene formation. "Tell me, Lieutenant, how does it feel to defeat prey that bites only once before rolling over?" The lieutenant hesitated. "Effortless, Admiral. Almost too effortless." Kale caught the uncertainty beneath the surface and let the silence linger. Then slowly he smiled, sharp and predatory. "That is the point. Effortless victory builds inevitability. Inevitability builds fear. Fear ensures obedience." On the lower decks, prisoners were herded into containment cells, a handful of ragged human soldiers among them. Kale's gaze swept over them as the feed appeared on the holo. He frowned slightly at the face of one prisoner in particular, bloodied, bruised, but eyes burning with defiance. Unlike the others, this one did not look broken. The human was dragged forward for questioning. His lips curled into something close to a smile as he met Kale's gaze through the projection. "You think you've won," he rasped. "But this is just the surface. You've mistaken patience for weakness." Kale tilted his head, intrigued despite himself. "And who are you to make such claims, human?" "Sergeant Darius Holt. Special Forces." The titles spark a ripple of laughter among the bridge crew. Kale's second-in-command, Captain Vera, barked an amused sound. "Special Forces? If this is special, Admiral, I tremble to think what their ordinary soldiers look like." The sergeant's smile only widened, though blood stained his teeth. "That's the mistake every one of you keeps making. You think you've seen our strength. You haven't even brushed against it." Kale leaned forward. There was something unsettling about the human's calm. Most captives begged, cursed, or wept. This one spoke as though he were delivering a warning to an equal. "Enlighten me," Kale murmured. The human's voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible through static. "Earth remembers." Before Kale could press further, the feed cut out, the prisoner dragged back into the shadows. The moment lingered, irritating like grit beneath skin. Kale straightened, dismissing the unease with a wave. Humans were fond of dramatics. That was all. Later, in the officers' council chamber, maps stretched across the void, dozens of human colonies extinguished, territory expanding, like oil across water. Some admirals favored consolidating their grip, turning captured systems into bulwarks. Kale had a different vision. "Earth," he said simply, and the word froze the room. A younger Commodore frowned. "Their homeworld. Isn't that excessive? Striking colonies is one matter. But Earth is symbolic to them. Their origin. To assault it directly could galvanize resistance." Resistance. Kale's voice cut through the air like a blade. "They resist now, and what does it gain them? Every skirmish is another lesson in futility. Symbols have power, yes, but power crumbles when it is ground into dust. Imagine the message. Humanity's cradle, burned, its people enslaved. Their species will scatter, like ash on the solar wind." Captain Vera nodded in approval. "Bold. Necessary. End the myth at its root." Others shifted uneasily, but no one dared contradict Kale outright. The council thrived on fear and ambition. Hesitation rarely survived long. Kale could feel his pulse quickening, not with dread, but with the first true spark of interest he'd felt in years. Earth would not merely be a conquest. It would be a crown. As preparations began, Kale found himself returning to the memory of Sergeant Holt's words. The image of defiant eyes and that strange, almost pitying smile gnawed at him. He told himself it was nothing. Just a dying man's attempt to cling to significance. Still, when he closed his eyes, he heard the whisper echo, "Earth remembers." The fleet moved with precision, engines igniting across the void. Dozens of warships bent the fabric of space itself, forming into the spearhead that would plunge toward humanity's beating heart. Officers murmured of glory, of promotions, of crushing the last embers of rebellion. Kale let them indulge in their fantasies, but inside, he nursed a different hunger. He wanted challenge. He wanted to break something that might break back. As the stars warped into the kaleidoscope of faster-than-light travel, silence hung over the bridge. Kale's gaze lingered on the swirling tunnel of light ahead. For the first time in years, he felt anticipation. Not the dull certainty of inevitable victory, but the electric charge of stepping into the unknown. Behind him, Captain Vera allowed herself a low chuckle. "Special Forces," she mocked under her breath. Kale's lips curved into a smile that was not entirely amusement. "Perhaps we should thank them. Let them think themselves special. It makes it all the sweeter when we remind them what special looks like to the Council." But even as he spoke, unease stirred like a shadow at the edges of his thoughts. He remembered the human's words again, softer this time, more insistent. "Earth remembers." The fleet plunged onward, a storm gathering speed, certain of its own invincibility. Yet in the vast quiet between stars, inevitability was beginning to fracture, hairline cracks forming in the arrogance that had carried them so far. Something waited ahead, and though Kale could not yet name it, he felt its weight pressing against the future like the pause before a storm breaks. The transition from faster-than-light left the Council fleet suspended above a pale blue world, its oceans shimmering like liquid sapphire beneath scattered clouds. Earth did not look formidable. It looked vulnerable, open, almost inviting. Admiral Kale stood at the heart of his command bridge, watching the homeworld of humanity unfold with the indifference of a man admiring a jewel he had already decided to shatter. "Planetary scans complete," reported the sensor officer. "No major defense fleets in orbit. Civilian traffic only. Minimal station presence." Kale's lips curved. Predictable. But his second-in-command, Captain Vera, narrowed her eyes. Too predictable. Their colonies fought longer than this world appears prepared for. "They cling to illusions," Kale countered. "This will be no different. We will break them swiftly before they have the chance to remember courage." On the far side of the system, however, something stirred. Hidden in the cold shadows of scattered moons and forgotten orbits, Earth's defenses came alive with silent precision. Arrays long dormant flared awake, power surging through latticework buried in the crust of asteroids. Thousands of dormant satellites whispered to each other across encrypted channels, their signals weaving into a net that closed invisibly around the invaders. The first human broadcast came not with panic, but with calm finality. "Council fleet," a measured voice announced, transmitted across every channel, unshaken by the presence of Kale's armada. "This is Earth Command. You are trespassing. You will withdraw immediately." The bridge of Kale's flagship filled with laughter. Officers exchanged smirks, some outright chuckling at the audacity of such a measured demand. Kale himself felt the tension drain from his chest, relief blooming at the realization that humanity remained as naive as expected. Calm, yes, but calmness could be the last disguise of desperation. "Transmit response," Kale ordered. His voice dripped disdain. "This is Admiral Kale of the Council Armada. Earth is ours. Your command is broken. Your colonies lie in ruins. Submit, and you may live to serve." The human voice returned, unchanged, like stone beneath water. "Council Armada, your position is compromised. Leave now, or you will be engaged." Vera muttered, "Engaged? By what? They're empty stations." She gestured at the displays, which showed only fragile civilian craft and orbital debris. "It is theater." Then the stars ignited. The first strike was surgical. A vanguard frigate at the fleet's edge detonated before its captain could issue a single command. Another ship, then two more, vanished into expanding blossoms of fire. The projections stuttered as feeds died, fragments scattering into cold orbits. "Unknown weapon signatures," the sensor officer cried, voice breaking. "No visual origin. They're everywhere." Kale's chest tightened. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. On the tactical projection, faint signals emerged, tiny, almost invisible objects weaving through the fleet with unnatural precision. Drones, thousands of them, no larger than a fighter craft, moving like predators in a school. Defenses active, Vera hissed. For the first time, Kale heard unease in her tone. Calmly, the human voice returned. This is your final warning. Withdraw. Kale's claws dug into the arm of his chair. Countermeasures. Swat them from the void. But the countermeasures failed. Drone swarms adapted instantly, their formation shifting, attacks precise and silent. Every Council warship hit was struck at weak points no outsider should have known existed: fuel lines, engine cores, command relays. Ships that should have endured hours of combat were torn open in seconds. Panic surged across the bridge. Officers scrambled, shouting over each other. For the first time in his career, Kale felt the weight of uncertainty pressing against his throat. How did they hide this? Vera demanded. We've scanned their system for decades. Kale forced steel into his voice. This is an illusion. A desperate strike. Overwhelm them. Yet the illusion did not shatter. It grew stronger. From the dark side of the moon, massive orbital platforms revealed themselves, entire structures that had feigned dead silence now awakening into fire. Their cannons spoke in thunderbolts, tearing apart cruisers in single salvos. New human ships, sleek, angular, bristling with unknown technology, slipped into the battle space as though they had always been waiting just out of sight. They baited us, Vera whispered, horrified. Every colony, every defeat, bait. Kale's pulse hammered. It was impossible. Yet the precision, the timing, the orchestration left no room for denial. Humanity had been watching, waiting, not desperate, but deliberate. The human broadcast returned once more unhurried. Council Armada, Earth does not seek war. But you brought it here. You have mistaken restraint for inability. That mistake ends now. On the lower decks, alien soldiers who had mocked the notion of special forces fell silent. The phrase took on new weight as the realization settled in. If this was Earth's home defense, then what kind of soldiers had been deliberately sent to die in those distant colonies? Kale's mind raced, fury and disbelief twisting inside him. He wanted to laugh, to spit, to deny. But the reality bore down with crushing inevitability. Humanity had never been weak. They had been patient. Admiral, Vera said, her voice low, urgent. We should consider withdrawal before. Her words were cut off as another of their capital ships split apart under a silent barrage, debris scattering like shards of glass across the void. Kale's jaw locked. Withdrawal would mean disgrace, the end of his career, perhaps his life, at the hands of his own council. But pressing forward might mean annihilation. The bridge shuddered as a near strike rocked their flagship. Lights dimmed, alarms flared. Crew scrambled to contain the damage. Kale closed his eyes, and for a moment he saw the face of that human prisoner, Sergeant Holt, smiling through blood, whispering of memory. Earth remembers. The phrase looped in his mind as the calm human voice cut once more across the chaos. Admiral Kale, this is your last opportunity. Leave our skies, or you will not leave at all. Kale opened his eyes. He forced a breath through clenched teeth, gripping his chair until his knuckles whitened. He had come here seeking challenge. He had found something else entirely. The battle still raged, Council warships disintegrating under invisible knives, but the weight in the air had shifted. For the first time in generations, Kale felt what it was to be prey. And yet pride warred with survival, refusing to release its grip. He bared his teeth in a grimace, his voice steady despite the storm around him. Transmit to Earth Command, he ordered. Tell them this, the Council does not retreat. Even as he spoke the words, something deep in his chest twisted, a whisper of doubt colder than space itself. The storm had broken, and there would be no returning to calm skies. Admiral Kale did not sleep for 3 cycles. Sleep was a luxury reserved for those untroubled by memory, and his mind would not let him forget the silence of Earth's broadcast, the precision of its strikes, the way his vaunted armada had been butchered with the indifference of a surgeon excising rot. Reports streamed in from across the occupied zones, human raids on supply lines, unmanned fleets appearing where no wormhole signatures had been detected, Council garrisons wiped out without a trace of survivors. For the first time in his long career, Kale felt the contours of defeat press against him, not in theory, but in inevitability. He secluded himself in the dim quiet of his private chamber, a chamber lined with trophies from conquered worlds. Masks of resistance leaders, broken banners, shattered weapons encased in crystal. They should have brought him reassurance. Instead, they seemed to leer, mocking him. He summoned records seized from human archives, searching for understanding. What he found unsettled him. Grainy footage filled the air before him. Trenches scarred by mud and fire, lines of human soldiers crawling forward through barbed wire under ceaseless artillery. Another sequence, iron machines trundling across blasted landscapes, guns roaring, flames swallowing entire battalions. Then another, cities reduced to shadows under nuclear fire, survivors staggering through ruins with blank eyes. Centuries passed in moments, wars unending. Kale leaned closer, claws trembling against the projection controls. "They've been perfecting it," he whispered to no one. "War as heritage. Conflict as inheritance." The more he watched, the more the realization dug into his chest. Humanity had not been caught unprepared. They had been waiting for a worthy opponent. When he presented his findings before the High Council, the chamber erupted in discord. The Golden Hall rang with layered voices, some dripping scorn, others quivering with fear. "They are still primitives," one elder declared, her tone cold. "They hide behind machines because their bodies are frail. Their history of violence proves only savagery, not strength." Kale forced himself to meet her gaze. Savages who turned war into art. Do not mistake restraint for weakness. What we saw above Earth was not desperation. It was control. "I speak as though I wished to survive them," Kale snapped. His voice carried across the chamber, silencing murmurs. "They sacrificed colonies to lure us into complacency. They sent soldiers to die, so we would underestimate them. Tell me, what kind of civilization treats its own like pawns in a grand game? One that does not fear war but wields it with purpose." A murmur spread, darker now. Some shifted uneasily, the idea too heavy to dismiss. Others scoffed, their arrogance unbroken. "They are insects," another counselor declared. "Yes, insects with stingers, but still insects. We will crush them with our full weight. Call the home fleets, the reserve armies. Swarm their world until the oceans boil. And if we cannot..." Kale's voice cut through like a blade. The chamber froze. He continued, lower now, his tone heavy. "If they have been holding back? If what we saw was not their limit, but their opening move?" That night, Kale sat in solitude again, replaying the words of Sergeant Holt, the captured human who had stared at him without fear. Earth remembers. He had thought it bravado then. Now he understood it as truth. Memory was their weapon. They remembered every war, every mistake, every atrocity, and they forged it into a blade. Outside the council's chambers, unrest began to ripple through the military ranks. Soldiers who had once laughed at human resistance now whispered of them in uneasy tones. Some joked bitterly, others prayed for assignments far from the human frontier. Rumors spread like wildfire that Earth's drones could think, that their ships moved faster than physics allowed, that their commanders never lost because they already knew how the enemy thought. Each rumor painted humanity larger, darker, inevitable. Kale knew the truth lay somewhere between rumor and reality, but perception itself was poison. An empire built on fear could not afford to let its soldiers taste it for themselves. And yet fear spread, insidious. He gathered his senior staff. Captain Vera stood at his right, her face pale beneath her markings. She no longer mocked the humans. Not since she had watched entire council battalions erased in the silence of space. "They study us as we study them," Kale said quietly, pacing before the holographic map of contested systems. "They know our movements before we make them. They have anticipated every countermeasure. This is not luck. It is design." "Then we must strike harder," one officer insisted. His voice was steady, but Kale could smell the fear beneath. "If they adapt, we overwhelm them with scale. No one can match the council's numbers." Kale turned sharply. "Numbers mean nothing if each is cut down before it can fire. Their efficiency renders our scale irrelevant. What do you think happens when an enemy begins to believe our armies are not endless, but expendable?" For the first time, Kale revealed his private fear. "They will not just defeat us. They will redefine us. To lose against them is to admit we were never as strong as we claimed. Do you understand? This is no longer a war of territory. It is a war for meaning." Vera lowered her head, speaking softly, almost reluctantly. "And if we lose?" Kale met her gaze, and the words came with bitter weight. "Then the galaxy will no longer belong to the council. It will belong to them." In the following days, as council leaders bickered and delayed, humanity pressed forward. Skirmishes erupted across the borders. Each one ended the same: swift, clinical, decisive. Not drawn-out struggles, but executions. One night, Kale stood on the observation deck of his flagship, staring at the stars. He thought of the countless worlds he had burned, the armies he had broken, the fear he had wielded as easily as breath. He had been certain fear would always be his ally. But now he felt its edge turned inward. He wondered if this was what humanity had always intended, to take the very weapon the Council had used against the galaxy and turn it back on them. A transmission arrived, intercepted from a human side. It was not a threat. It was a recording, an ancient one. Human soldiers marching in rhythm, their chants echoing across time. The translation was simple, almost banal, but the cadence carried menace. They were not singing of conquest. They were singing of survival, of outlasting. Cale closed his eyes and felt something shift inside him. Admiration, yes, but also dread. Humanity was not a storm to be weathered, nor a tide to be endured. They were something far older, far more relentless. As he stood alone with that realization, Cale understood that his warnings to the Council would not save them. They were too arrogant, too blind. When the collapse came, it would not come with thunder, but with silence, the silence of Earth's calm voice reminding them all that patience was never weakness. The Admiral straightened, the weight of inevitability pressing heavy on his shoulders. His path was clear now. He would fight, because duty demanded it. But in the stillness of his heart, he admitted a truth even more terrible. He no longer fought to win. He fought only to delay. The Council's last fleet assembled in the shadow of their capital world, an armada so vast it seemed to eclipse the stars themselves. Thousands of ships, banners of every conquered world painted across their hulls, gathered in a desperate display of power. Admiral Cale stood at the center of it all, his reflection caught in the panoramic glass of his command bridge. He had once imagined such a sight would fill him with pride. Now it felt like an epitaph written across the void. Behind him, Captain Vera's voice broke the silence. "They're coming." No alarms heralded the arrival of humanity's forces. The void simply bent, and then tore open. Wormholes bloomed like wounds in the fabric of space, silent and precise. From them emerged not a fleet, but a tide. Human warships, angular and unadorned, poured forth in disciplined formations. Drones followed in their billions, swarming like locusts, their movements a single mind spread across countless bodies. The Council fleet opened fire first. The stars themselves seemed to burn as energy lanced across the void, saturating space with destructive brilliance. Entire waves of drones disintegrated under the onslaught, but the swarm closed the distance without faltering. The first human salvos struck with surgical precision, disabling engines, cracking hulls, burning through ships that should have survived a dozen such hits. Cale gripped the railing, his voice low but steady. "Engage." No hesitation. His officers obeyed, and the battle exploded in full. Council warships maneuvered in tight formations, their size and firepower unmatched. But humanity's strategy was not to meet them blow for blow. They moved like ghosts, ships darting between wormholes, striking and vanishing before retaliation could land. Fleets appeared behind Council lines without warning, as though time itself had betrayed them. Cale's gaze remained fixed on the unfolding chaos. He could see the truth even as he fought to deny it. The Council fought with weight, with numbers, with spectacle. Humanity fought with knowledge. Every strike exploited a weakness no outsider should have known. Every maneuver anticipated the Council's counter before it was made. It was not simply a war of weapons, it was a war of memory, and humanity's memory stretched deeper than the stars. Vera stumbled as the bridge shook under impact. Shields collapsing. Casualties mounting. "Admiral, if we withdraw now, we may preserve a fraction." No, Cale's tone carried finality. Withdrawal was no longer survival. It was slow death. "We hold here. If the galaxy must see the Council bleed, then let it see us bleed, facing forward." Yet even as he spoke, a bit of thought lodged itself inside him. He was not facing forward. He was standing on ground already lost. The humans pressed harder. Their drones enveloped Council dreadnoughts, stripping them apart piece by piece. Their ships darted like predators among a herd, their calm efficiency terrifying in its lack of triumph. No cheers, no boasts, only silence over open channels, punctuated by clinical reports. It was war without theater, victory without celebration. For Cale, that silence became unbearable. "Open a channel," he commanded. The static cleared, and the calm voice of Earth command filled the bridge once more. "Admiral Cale." He drew in a slow breath. "You fight without rage, without joy. Do you not feel it? Do you not crave glory?" The reply came after a pause, measured and heavy. "We do not crave war, Admiral. We endure it. You brought it to us. And now we end it." Cale's jaw clenched. He wanted to spit, to mock, to claw back dignity with words. But the weight of their tone pressed on him, like gravity. It was not triumph. It was judgment. Around him, the battle unraveled. The Council's unstoppable fleet fractured, ships scattering, captains abandoning formation in desperate bids for survival. Some rammed their own vessels rather than be taken. Others transmitted frantic pleas to the Council capital, begging for reinforcements that would never come. Vera's voice cracked. "Admiral, it's over." Cale turned to face her. Her eyes, once sharp with arrogance, now held only fear and resignation. He realized then that she had changed as much as he had. She no longer believed in the Council's invincibility. She believed in humanity's inevitability. The flagship shuddered as explosions rippled across its hull. Flames licked through ruptured corridors. Officers screamed over failing comms. Cale stood tall amid the chaos, his chest tight with a feeling he could not name. Was it despair? Admiration? Perhaps both. The human voice returned, soft but unyielding. "Admiral Cale, the Council fleet is destroyed. You will surrender. You will live. Resist, and you will vanish with them." Cale closed his eyes. He thought of Sergeant Holt, bloodied yet unbroken, whispering Earth remembers. He thought of the human wars he had studied, the endless cycles of destruction and survival. He thought of the arrogance that had blinded him, the empire that had believed itself eternal. When he opened his eyes, he felt older than he had ever known. His voice, when it came, carried no fire. "Transmit acknowledgement. The Council surrenders." The words fell like stones into silence. Vera bowed her head, relief mingling with grief. The surviving crew slumped in their stations, some weeping quietly, others staring blankly at nothing. The battle outside had ended, but inside, something deeper had broken. Later, Cale stood on the scorched soil of his capital world, watching human envoys walk among the ruins. They did not gloat. They did not parade their victory. They moved with quiet efficiency, establishing order where chaos had reigned. The Council was gone, and in its place stood something colder, steadier. A human officer approached him, eyes sharp yet calm. "You will serve as liaison," the officer said. "Your knowledge of your people is valuable. This is not exile. It is assignment." Cale inclined his head. Once he would have bristled at such a leash. Now he accepted it as inevitable. He had fought not to win, but to delay. And delay had bought them nothing. That night, alone beneath the shattered spires of the Council capital, Cale whispered to the silence. "We called them special forces, as though they were exceptions. But they were never exceptions. They were all special. All sharpened by history sharper than ours." He tilted his head back to the stars. Once they had been his empire, scattered jewels to collect. Now they belonged to humanity, though humanity had not claimed them with flags or banners. They had claimed them with memory, with patience, with war endured and refined until no empire could outlast them. The galaxy would not remember the Council as conquerors. It would remember them as the ones who awakened Earth. And Cale, broken yet alive, felt the chill certainty settle in his bones. The galaxy's story had turned a page, and humanity was writing it now. No celebration followed, no fireworks of triumph. Only silence stretched across the stars, a silence more terrible than any roar of victory. Humanity did not smile. Humanity did not weep. Humanity prepared. And as Cale closed his eyes, he understood the final truth. They had never wanted war. But now, they had been forced to remember what they were capable of. And the galaxy would never forget it again.